Hello, Delvers, and welcome back to Pixelscopic live stream for the 27th of March 2015. Pixelscopic is an indie game development studio working on Delver's Drop, a combat-focused, randomly generated action RPG. I'm your host and longtime streamer of the game, Vasae, here to discuss development with...
I'm Ryan Baker. I'm an artist and the creative director of the game. And this week I'm going to be working on, well, the Elementalist, one of the characters. So yeah, I'm just going to show you guys a couple things with the color scheme first, and then we'll actually start working on the like slicing him up and kind of drawing the different angles for him to get him into the game. Was there anything else that we were supposed to say in the intro that we forgot?
Nope, everything's perfect.
All right, awesome. So this is my giant color scheme brainstorming sheet, or I guess one of a couple of them. I'll pull the other one up here just so we can give a little background info. And then I will pull up the Elementalist as well.
You might want to have Nathen or Matthew tweet out.
Oh, that we're streaming?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can do that pretty quick here. I always forget to do that because I just think people know. Like, people just, shouldn't they just sit around and like watch our stream, like, or watch our Twitter feed all day and just keep our stream on until we go live? Like, that's how it works, right?
Right, that's not at all unreasonable, I don't think. Chris92 asks if there's an ETA on the next update. He's been lurking on the forums and waiting for it.
The like update to the game or Kickstarter update? Probably updated build is what I would assume. We're not really sure yet. I mean, we've been making some pretty good progress, which I can talk about more in just a second. But yeah, we don't really have a date. Like, basically, we're kind of undergoing a couple of like system overhauls that will probably break the game pretty seriously until they get sorted out and some data gets put back in. Okay, I tweeted. So, yeah, Kobe actually, well, this has been kind of in process for a while, and I think Kobe's been scared to death to do it, but basically we need to overhaul a couple things in the physics system. Basically right now the game is too physicsy, sometimes in gameplay, and I mean we can, basically if we reduce the properties on stuff, we can get it to feel less crazy, but then it starts feeling more stale. So basically we need to make the entire physics system more stable, which actually means reworking it a bit. So it's, I mean, most games don't use true physics unless they use like Havoc or something like that, and what we have right now is kind of like the 2D equivalent of a Havoc style, like, you know, sort of true physics system, and we're probably going to pull away from that a little bit and make it because basically, like, in order to do something like character dashing, we have to input a certain amount of force, and then like the game kind of takes care of the rest. So we can't very easily say like, well, we want the character to do a zero gravity dash that can go over pits for 2 tiles. Like, that becomes almost impossible because we kind of, it's hard to like turn off the gravity, and so they just fall in pits, and it's kind of like, basically it worked really well until we started trying to add a couple of features like dashing over pits, and then it's like, oh yeah, we just can't do this in the physics system, so we're gonna have to pull a couple things back. But the goal would be to make the game feel pretty much the same in the end, and but make it more flexible for us to do some cool features. So hopefully that was a clear way of kind of putting where we're at or like what we're struggling with at the moment, and is holding back the build a little bit.
Awesome. Do you want to tell people what you're working on, just as we get more people?
Yeah. So today we're going to be working on the Elementalist. This is the old sketch. I did some color adjustments a while back, but I think this was probably the version that was shown on Kickstarter way back when. Actually, this. So I made some changes. So a little bit of paint over work. You can see a change there, making his eyes a little bigger, closing his mask off a little bit. So I did that, and then I changed some highlights at some point, brightened up his helmet a little bit, and then I decided to shift his colors slightly. And I actually did a bit of overall color shifting. I was trying to figure out guild colors for the future. Like, there's some guilds that aren't currently in this game, but that will be in future games. And the Elementalist, I've always struggled with what his colors should be. Like, this kind of looks like mystical, I guess, but something about like too much green bothered me a little bit, since he's going to be using a lot of fire and lightning and everything else too. You know, so as much as he kind of is nature related, he's not. The Elementalists aren't really kind of like nature shaman. They're more like a little bit more destructive. Not intentionally. They aren't like. They aren't mean about it. But they might just like accidentally blow something up, because they're just kind of weird like that. So I thought about keeping him in kind of like an earth tone palette, but shifting away from green and more toward like this brown and gray kind of look. So which looks like a pretty big shift if you compare these two, but hopefully I can do something here that's it's not going to be terribly different from especially the original version. Which I'll turn some of these off again. So back to there. So like this is probably a little bit closer, still a little more green. I'm just going to desaturate those greens and change his cape to be a little more of a brown than a red. So make it, or more like a rust red or brick red kind of thing.
Or like a burgundy.
Yeah. And then I'm going to start, I've got to fix a couple of perspective things on this guy, and start getting him cut up a little bit and drawing different angles for him so we can get him in the game at some point.
Well, awesome. Do you want to talk about some of the other guilds, or do you want to leave that?
Well, yeah, I mean, we can quickly go through them. I think some of this has been quasi-public knowledge for a while, but it's probably mostly talked about on the forums.
Yeah, it's on the forums. A lot of it's on the forums.
I think I showed one version of this way back when, and there have been a couple changes since then. Like you can see here, he's still kind of green and purple. This one's the newest version. But actually, let me switch here because it's got the names. So we were working on some ideas for guild icons and these kind of banners for each guild, which may show up in the game whenever we do the guild rooms, where you can basically it's like a secret room inside some dungeons where you can kind of recharge, rest and heal up and everything. So this was when, well, we've moved the assassin since then, so I'll go ahead and delete the assassin out of there. The assassin is now going to be in the Night Walkers, which should probably be called the Night Striders instead, because that Night Walker sounds... why can I not? Oh, it's locked.
Doom wants to know what the Elementalist's head rock is made out of.
Everyone's always thought it's a rock, and I originally wanted it to be a stump. You can probably tell it looks kind of like it's sort of got the rings of wood, but I'm fine with it. Like, I've kind of thought that the Elementalists would like build their own helm or out of just like something they found. So it might be a tree stump, it might be a rock, it might just be bits of moss and stuff kind of like all put together. I mean, they're basically Radagast from the Hobbit movies. If you all have seen that, that's a pretty good comparison, I think, for the what the Elementalist is and acts like. But yeah, to zip through the guilds really quick, the Hangman Hoods includes the Rogue, and you can see their colors there. The Torchbearers are the Elementalists and some other kind of elemental magic users. Well, when I say guilds, like these will eventually, if we're able to do a sequel, or just kind of in the lore of the game, there are multiple classes in each of these guilds, and the classes may kind of change over time throughout history, but generally the guild has kind of a focus or like a general set of goals or expertise. The Searing Winds, that's the Musketeer. They're kind of, they use pretty much like magical gunpowder and concoctions and do some alchemy for kind of military purposes. The Sword Scars is the Gladiator and other fighters. The Wild Beloved includes the Beastkeeper. They're kind of like nomadic. I mean, they're the ones that are like the most connected to sort of wildlife and flora and fauna and so on. The Compass Seekers includes the Cartographer and other kind of strategists and support classes. The Gilded Smiles has the Bard and the Harlequin. The Harlequin of which will be in the game as kind of the Kickstarter exclusive, at least at first Kickstarter exclusive, but everyone will be able to play with the Harlequin eventually. The Night Striders would be the Assassin and the Huntsman. The Huntsman won't be in the game, but the Assassin will. And I mean, the Assassin's kind of established as being purple currently in the game because originally she was part of the Rogues Guild of Hangman Hoods, but I may go ahead and shift the colors or come up with something kind of in between to make it, you know, more of these like earth tone, kind of brown and green, which I actually like better. If you can kind of see in the background of my my desktop wallpaper here, the Assassin is down in the corner, and I really like that look. It's a little more unique and actually probably more like what a real ninja would wear rather than lots of purple and pink.
Chris92 also asks, is there a plan to bring the beta build to Steam anytime soon?
We're not sure how soon. I believe we mentioned in the Kickstarter update that we probably will release a Steam build before we do early access at some point. We do have the capability to do that. We just want to basically get to the point that we have another good build, and we'll basically just like put it on Humble probably first, just to make sure there aren't any issues, like, you know, have some people play it, make sure there aren't any like serious bugs or problems, and then like a week or two later possibly put it on Steam. So I'm hoping we can do that with the next build, but no promises yet. It's probably going to take a little bit of just testing to make sure that we do everything correctly with Steam, and then there's some complications to basically, like, it's not going to be on the Steam store. Like, we'll just kind of send a link or something, I don't actually know how it works, out to backers and people who've already purchased it, so that they can play it, but it's not like publicly available for sale on Steam. There's a way to do it, I'm not really totally sure yet. So I guess the rest of these classes, the Dawn followers are kind of your clerics and so on. They do some plant magic as well, healing magic. The Tower Watch is they're sort of the paladins and knights, and also have some magic capabilities, mainly for defense. They do some wind and water magic, and probably some ice as well. The Shade Whisperers includes the Sorcerer, and they do spirit magic. And then finally, the Bone Wardens is probably the newest class, and they are kind of like they're basically Zed from Borderlands, sort of like gritty healers who have some melee ability as well, so they would do like. Well, basically, they would do amputations on enemies or on allies, possibly. But you know, in order to like save an ally's life, but they can also cripple enemies. So it's, I guess, like, if there were some kind of like a plague doctor class in our game, they would probably go in the Bone Warden somewhere. But you know, they would use weapons that are like saws and scalpels and things like that. But do some or do like use leeches to like remove a status effect from an ally. So I'm thinking, like, if we at some point did a turn-based game, one of the Bone Wardens would do like leeches on an ally to remove poison from them, but it would decrease their health a little bit in exchange. So that's kind of, they have this like healing sort of, but it's like, you know, pro and con balance with those guys. So, yep.
The Bone Wardens had a class called Metalrite. What is that about?
Oh, on the forums probably.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was thinking that the Bone Wardens would also do a bit of kind of smithing and artificing, you know, making armor and protective gear. They'd also kind of preside over, like, I think there was a class that was like a grave digger and an exorcist. So they also have, like, they would probably have connections to the new one of the new elements, which is called Grim, which has to do with gravity, the grave, metal, and banishing evil spirits, kind of like iron, you know, works against fairies in folklore.
So you talked about multiplayer a little bit last week. and there's also going to be co-op. So does each guild have its own associated familiar?
I haven't really thought about familiars in that way. Like I think they probably wouldn't be as strict. It might be nice to have some that are kind of like the favored familiar or type of familiar for certain classes. But I mean, the familiars, which I think we went back and forth a bunch on the forums about what we were going to call them, like, trying to come up with a cute name. And I think I'm actually just going to call them sprites, which I know is sort of unfortunate because we had a bunch of good ideas, but I wanted something that was like less of a mouthful for people, because we talked about like elementals and stuff like that. And I just, when I thought about that, like, it's, a sprite is like in kind of mythology and folklore, it's in, a kind of spirit or fairy, but then also sprites obviously in video games so it's kind of like a cute double reference. So anyway, the sprite companions, I'm thinking, are just these kind of like elemental spirits. Not like, they're not pure elemental, so there isn't just like the elementalings or something else. Those are just like elemental critters, where these would be, they're basically like elemental Pokemon, and so their genes would be kind of built out of elements. So there would be like one that's a combination of like fire and earth, and that kind of, if you combine those two things, you could sort of summon this particular sprite companion. So that's kind of how I envision that working, at least kind of in concept.
And I don't know if this is carried over, but the Beastkeeper is supposed to be able to have some kind of buffs to that sort of stuff.
Right, yeah, it'll be easier for the Beastkeeper to summon them and to keep them around. So I'm not quite sure how that'll work out gameplay wise, but because we still haven't really prototyped the sprites, since they're that whole thing is kind of tied to some stretch goal stuff and would probably come a little later anyway, so we haven't put a whole lot of work into it just yet. It's more just like kind of planning, but I want to prototype some before we really kind of nail down exactly how they work. But sorry, I lost my train of thought there. That happens sometimes when I'm drawing. But yeah, I mean, what I was kind of thinking was it would be nice if the Beastkeeper can basically uses less energy to kind of have an Elemental active, and so she can keep them around longer, or possibly there's a higher percentage chance that she could kind of find the summoning room or shrine or what have you to summon them. Because the way I've kind of seen it working, and I hate to add another kind of layer of complexity to the game, but I was thinking that it would be nice if we could basically to have some kind of bar to entry so that you don't have them around just 24/7, is that you well, you either have to take up an equipment slot to carry a specific item that allows you to keep one of those active at all times, and you can probably, so that we can do the two-player effectively, you could probably go to a shopkeeper in the jail and basically just pay some money to buy this item, but it's got to stay in your inventory. It gets kind of like locked into a specific inventory slot, and so you can only equip then like the three weapons in your secondary slots, something along those lines. So there is this, like, downside to having one active at all times. But in general, to summon a different one, what I wanted to do was have it so that you basically pick up these elemental crystals, which are just kind of like, like money or anything else. You just, they get spit out of crates, and you pick them up, and they're somewhere on the subscreen. It'll say how many of each you have, and then when you arrive at these sprite summoning shrines, you would choose, like, okay, I want to spend like one fire and one earth or whatever, and then you would summon a particular sprite. And so there are kind of these like formulas that you would put together to summon your favorites, or like formulas to try to get new ones. The only bad thing is, like, if we had those, if we basically did every elemental combination, it would be something like 200 sprites, which is probably like way over the budget for what we can actually pull off, and everything time-wise. So I'm still trying to figure that out. Or it might just be that this shrine kind of just gives you a formula that you have to, like, basically you've got 3 options, and you can from any particular shrine, and it might be somewhat randomized. So as long as you have these little, fire gems to spend, you can summon any of those 3 choices that it presents to you. Something like that. Like, I'd like to keep it pretty simple and streamlined, especially for new players, to kind of understand what's going on and be able to summon them easily.
Doomass doesn't sprite limit you to a cutesy thing, and is there familiar AI?
There will be AI for them. It's going to be pretty simple. Basically we want them to not break the game. And that's why I'm thinking, like, okay, they use a weapon slot, but they should only be about as useful as having a weapon. And they'll kind of float around and do some stuff for you, but you've got to spend your SP or your like special meter to kind of keep them active, or if they do any of their kind of special moves, it's going to drain your SP. So then you might not be able to dash for a little bit, So there is some pro and con to it. But as far as the look, I do want them to be like cuter than some of the monsters, I guess. But I would say, like, stylistically, I would like for them to be somewhere in between Pokemon and what you see in a Shin Megatan game, probably. Which obviously Shin Megatan is quite a bit darker, like with its demons and everything. And Pokemon obviously is a lot more cute. So, like, Devil's Drop is kind of in between that, like, cute and dark already. So I think if you can imagine something in between those two, that's probably where I would want to be. And they're all going to be, like, on the small side, more than likely. Kind of the size of, like, a bat or a rat or something like that. But there might be some that are bigger. It could be kind of interesting to try to make some bigger, more powerful ones, but maybe you'd have to spend more of those gems to get them or something like that.
You have to have a ferret.
A ferret?
Or some...
Is that a request from you or from...
Well, yeah, but, Legend of the Beastkeeper... Ferrets are a staple of the animal familiar genre.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Did you never watch Legend of the Beastkeeper?
No. What's that? Is that?
It's this really, really bad live action, kind of when Xena Warrior Princess.
Oh, was it a movie?
I think there was a movie, and then there was a TV series.
Because I've seen the movie The Beastmaster, which was not very good. But I was kind of in a phase of watching, like, every 80s fantasy movie. I rather like Lady Hawk. It's not the best, but...
Haven't seen that one.
Yeah, I would recommend it to everyone. What's the dude's name who's in that?
What's it called?
Lady Hawk, all one word.
Lady Hawk.
It's got Rutger Hauer, who's also in Blade Runner, Michelle Pfeiffer, and the star is Matthew Broderick, like young little like 20-year-old Matthew Broderick, and his acting is kind of weird. He's supposed to sort of be a goofball in the movie anyway, like his character is. So I'd say, like, that's my movie recommendation of the week. Everyone go watch Lady Hawk. Come back and tell me how horrible you think it is, and we'll all have a good time talking about it.
Doom knows Legend of the Beastkeeper, because all he said was, "Oh God, Voss." See, he knows. Ferris Bueller, yeah, Matthew. I don't think Matthew Broderick's been in a movie that I've ever liked.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this was well, before he was famous, for sure. I guess I don't really know my timeline that well for, what all he's been in. But I think it was before Ferris Bueller. I'm not going to try to say it again because I'm going to get tongue-tied.
The year before
Bueller.
Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yeah.
The year before it. Oh shit! The movie came out the year I was born.
Which one did?
Lady Hawk.
Yeah. I feel this special kindred to Blade Runner, partly because I like it, but because it came out the year. What's that?
Oh, apparently the TV show was just called Beastmaster. I always thought it was called Legend of the Beastmaster.
Oh, okay.
But sorry to interrupt.
I have that special kindred with Blade Runner because it came out the year I was born, and apparently my parents went to see it when my mom was pregnant with me, which is really surprising because it definitely doesn't seem like a movie she would ever want to watch. But I don't know. Sometimes my mom surprises me.
My mother was the person who got me interested in heavy metal.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my mom was the person who got me interested in music to begin with, but she listens to Disturbed and stuff like that. She doesn't quite go as heavy as like In Flames or Cannibal Corpse or anything like that, like I do. But yeah, she's been to like 5 or 6 Led Zeppelin concerts. She hitchhiked to Woodstock.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'd always listen to music in the car. I guess 100.7 for those who live in Ohio and know Cleveland call signs. The buzzer. It's an iconic. You know, it's one of those.
Yeah.
It was one of the first radio stations to play rock and roll music. Like Cincinnati KXCY, I think. Back in the day, birthplace of rock and roll, Cleveland, Ohio. With a Rock Hall of Fame and all that. So, which, if you've ever been there, really freaking boring. Have you ever been to the Rock Hall?
I have not.
It's this giant glass pyramid. The guy who did the glass pyramid for the Louvre also did the pyramid design. His name is IMK. It's just this gigantic glass pyramid with an escalator and whatever you want to call those vertical escalators that they have in the airports, whatever you want to call those things, and you basically just sit and get moved around and you see like clothing of famous rock and roll people and stuff like that. Led Zeppelin was heavy metal back in the day. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's
heavy metal.
Yeah, that's pretty strange to me. Like, even, I mean, which I realize, but I have these Pandora stations that are, you know, I was trying to kind of create like a heavier Pandora station, and then it's like suddenly, you know, Led Zeppelin will come on, and I'm not a huge Led Zeppelin fan. I know that's probably sacrilege for some people, but I'm more interested in, like, I just don't really listen to, well, I guess what would probably be considered oldies, but it's like, wow, this used to be heavy. Like this doesn't even fit in with the station I'm trying to design.
No way. Back in the day, it was rock and roll. Sure, but it was heavy for the time. The term heavy metal came about after Black Sabbath, really. Still heavier than Buddy Holly, and he was rock and roll. Although I guess Black Sabbath was kind of contemporary too, so. Maybe I'm getting my dates. I think Voss got it wrong. I don't think it ever was called heavy metal. I'm just saying it was heavy metal. It was heavier than Buddy Holly.
Well, it would have been called hard rock, right?
Maybe. I don't know when that term came about.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, I don't think people would have, well, I don't know. Like, those terms usually have a weird origin story that you wouldn't expect. So I don't really know, like, when or how the term metal originated, but yeah, I would say Led Zeppelin used to be hard rock, because that's like, there's actually a place locally called it's Classic Rock Coffee, sorry, and it's basically like, you know, kind of classic, you know, hard rock.
Such Power said he thought he used to have, or she, I don't know, a crush on Stevie Nicks, but when I went to the Rock Hall of Fame, I realized I only had a crush on her wardrobe. Stevie Nicks lives in Phoenix. She lives in the same city that I do. Or she used to. I don't know if she still lives here, but...
You're not, like, next door neighbors to her or something?
I think she lives in Gilbert, which is where I live. But no,
you should go say hi.
Yeah. Hey, you don't know me, but...
But you're a star, so I'm gonna knock on your door anyway.
Yeah. It's gonna be. Well, no. The first heavy metal bands such as Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, and Deep Purple attracted large audiences.
Okay, so they do consider Led Zeppelin heavy metal.
Mm-hmm.
So what's
titled and developed in the 1960s and early 70s, largely in the United Kingdom and the United States, with roots in blues rock and psychedelic rock. The bands that created heavy metal developed a thick, massive sound characterized by highly amplified distortion, extended guitar solos, emphatic beats, and overall loudness. Heavy metal lyrics and performance styles are often associated with masculinity, aggression, and machismo.
So was there metal before heavy metal, or is metal just a shortening of the term heavy metal?
I think it's just a shortening. Yeah, it says the first heavy metal bands such as Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, and Deep Purple attracted large audiences, so they were often derided by critics, a status common throughout the history of the genre. During the mid-70s, Judas Priest helped spur the genre's evolution by discarding much of the blues influence. Motorhead introduced a punk rock sensibility and an increasing emphasis on speed, leading in the late 1970s bands in the new wave of British heavy metal, which I guess is Iron Maiden and Saxon, followed in a similar vein. Before the end of the decade, heavy metal fans became known as metal heads or headbangers. So I didn't get it wrong. Take that, chat. I wouldn't classify Led Zeppelin as heavy metal today. They're pretty entrenched in classic rock. That's just something that people don't. I mean, people are like, yeah, I really like Led Zeppelin. It's like, well, do you like Led Zeppelin, or do you like the things that they play on the radio? Oh, well, we like the stuff that they play on the radio. It's like their discography is huge. Yeah. Chat, take that. See, Mike? See what happens?
Well, what usually happens with me is I probably hate what they play on the radio, but I might actually, like, if I dove into it, I would probably like some of their albums and lesser played stuff. I've kind of found that to be the case sometimes.
I can't. I mean, I used to like Led Zeppelin, but like I said, my mom was a huge Led Zeppelin fan, and that's all that would play at the house, and I'm just sick to death of them. Guitarist is real good though.
What's that?
I'm told I have to mention Delver's Metal.
Delver's Metal?
Yeah, some crazy bard probably with a magical electric guitar.
Okay.
Talking about the bard, yep, see, people in chat are with me. You can call it the axe. Although your naming conventions for weapons, it'd be like the mariachi axe of squirrel slaying or something like that.
Yep.
I don't think you've shown that aspect of the game since you guys have come back.
Just the weapon naming stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, some of that randomization we're still working on too. But yeah, it should be pretty fun when we get to that point. Like, I really wanted the weapon names to kind of seem like Mad Libs a little bit, or is that the right term? Is that what I'm thinking of? I haven't played that game very much, but like,
I think so.
Yeah, but just
the game where you like the noun has a nice pelt adjective sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I definitely wanted the weapon names to feel like that eventually. And I mean, right now, like, we've really just kind of worked on. Well, we did some work on everything, but the randomized kind of, Diablo-esque prefix suffix thing isn't in the game yet. So there's some kind of behind the scenes development for it, but.
And it's still calculated by piecing things together, right?
That's the plan. We're probably going to have to simplify it just because I don't... the original plan was to have more terms and make it kind of ridiculous, and I'd like to do that at some point in the future for a different game that's more just about loot only and has kind of less of the character abilities and stuff. Probably not an action game. I think it would make more sense as a turn-based game or kind of a card game-ish approach. Yeah, so we're probably, I think we were originally going to do 4 terms max or something like that, and we're probably going to end up doing 3 per weapon. But yeah, it'll have some kind of like a prefix suffix system.
Right, it's Diablo naming, yeah, or Borderlands naming.
Right, yeah.
Borderlands gun creation is pretty cool. It's similar to your style, where it's like muzzle, trigger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was definitely the inspiration for it, where certain, and I mean, we are going to step away from that a little bit just because of the sheer quantity of art that needs to get made. So I think there are going to be fewer terms that result in a different hilt on the weapon, and we're probably just going to have fewer hilts overall. But yeah, there will be certain terms that do change a part of the weapon out. And I mean, we ended up, it's good that we did it that way anyway, because we can build pretty unique swords, because they are like a hilt and a crossbar and blade are all separate pieces in their spine file, like the asset that the game pulls in. So it's good that we plan them that way. We've got it set up in theory to be like super flexible, so we could like, you know, totally, or maybe even in an expansion or something like that at some point we could add more kind of weapon customization or just more unique parts for the weapons very easily if we had more time to kind of put into the development of it. But yeah, I think because we don't want the kind of like war of attrition of stat growth, we're probably going to put a little less emphasis into weapons. And the more I've been thinking about it, the more I realize that for what we're doing kind of with the physics and everything, it makes sense to put a little more emphasis in kind of some kind of gear or like equipable items that just change properties on your character. And I still want to have like, you know, all these crazy weapons, but I think like, you know, a pair of boots that changes your speed or adds more traction could actually be more interesting to the player than the weapons. But I don't know, still testing all that out. That's just me kind of brainstorming and thinking out loud on air, I suppose.
We're live.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all good. Best Diablo name was Dumb Tree Fist. I don't think I ever saw that. Taking Borderlands as a role model for random weapons is not so good. Yeah, it's got some problems with its random weapon generation.
Well, I liked Borderlands 1 a lot better than Borderlands 2. Like it felt painful to use the starting weapons in Borderlands 2, which I guess right now some of our starting weapons are kind of painful as well. But the goal would be to add more pros to using weapons, even bad weapons, is something I've kind of been working toward. So, well, here's something else I can throw out. Like, my plan has been for a while, it just needs to get reprogrammed, but to make it so that when you run out of uses on a weapon, you can actually keep using it. It'll just do a lot less damage, or you know, might do no damage but can just like only stun enemies or only knock them back or something like that. So it's still usable. You won't really get, like, you'll never get stuck where like all your weapons break and you can't do anything, the way that kind of happens sometimes when we were at PAX because people didn't really understand how to pick up weapons and equip new ones and some of that, you know, if they were picking up the game for the first time. And so that's a limited problem. Like, that can be tutorialized, but I do want weapons to be expendable and for you to be picking up new weapons and trying new things, but at the same time I don't want you to have to pick up new weapons all the time just because you hate your current weapons.
Well, class weapons don't have charges, as last I remember.
Right. Yes, and that'll still be true, that your primary weapon for your class will still be infinite use. But the new thinking is that, you know, there are these, well, and it's currently in the game, you just probably wouldn't know unless we told you, because there's no kind of way to see it in any, you know, there's no submenu right now. But each class would have their primary type, which is infinite use, and then you have weapons that you are just kind of good with, like that, you know, weapons you can use. They're not in your expertise, but you don't suck at them. And those weapons you can pick up ammo to refill. They do deplete over time, but you know they've got normal stats. You pick them up, they are what they are. You get certain bonuses, like higher speed if you use weapons for your class. But then there are also weapons that you are bad with, so like the Elementalist would probably be really horrible with guns, just because it's like, you know, he's used to like using sticks and stuff as weapons, like having a staff, and so that's just like not anywhere near his realm. Where like for the Rogue, like they've probably played around with some guns, so but they're not experts at them like the Musketeer, so they could use them just fine. They just have to pick up ammo and everything. But the Elementalists, like, they wouldn't even know how to reload the gun. So even if they find ammo that would typically refill the gun, they can't actually refill it. It's just like, it's got 10 uses, and once those uses are up, you just got to throw it out of your inventory or it might break. But that is the other thing, is I would really like for... and we're still working on this. Again, a physics problem. Whenever you throw something out of your inventory, it just like drops to the ground. We couldn't actually... basically, they would clip through things if we added enough force to have them be able to like throw weapons across the room. So that's because you've got to, in order to like overcome gravity, we would have to add so much force. It would either fly up in an arc and miss things, or it would, if you throw something in a straight line, it's going to hit the ground pretty quickly, just because gravity is constant that way. So yet another reason to rework the physics system. But I want any weapons that you use up, I would like for you to, probably if you try to use them again, you actually just automatically throw them out of your inventory. But once you learn how to use that, you can just chuck weapons like, I've got this gun that I used up the ammo for. My Elementalist can't refill it, so now I'm just going to throw that at the next enemy I come across for pretty decent damage. And I really want throwing to actually be a pretty big part of the game, so you can use your environment more, pick up crates, throw them at enemies. Like that was always really fun to me in Link's Awakening on the Game Boy, which is the Zelda game I played the most, put the most hours into. Like, it was just always really satisfying to like pick up this pot and throw it, and just the sound effects were really good. And like, since you couldn't do it initially, you had to get the power glove or bracelet first. I think it's a power glove in Link to the Past and a power bracelet on Link's Awakening. But
I think so.
Yeah, so since it wasn't something you got immediately, it made it kind of seem cooler, and was just fun to do.
Doom asked, last time we asked, you said you liked Borderlands 2 more than 1. What changed your opinion? But I don't think that's true. I think every time we've spoken, you voiced that you liked 1 better.
Yeah, I think that's what I would have said. I mean, 2 definitely feels more polished, but it feels like I liked the rough charm of Borderlands 1. So when I first started playing Borderlands 2, it almost felt like too fluid, and the enemies move around and dodge a little bit too much. Like I just kind of, and I understand. Like I'm sure it's a much better game, and I'm not. I will readily admit I'm not that good at shooters. I'm okay. Like I can play it. It's not like I used to be horrible because I just hadn't played them forever. And then I played Halo 3 and used Halo 3 to like teach myself how to do the twin stick aiming thing that all shooters have used forever. But it just like, I liked the dumb fun of like running backwards and shooting dudes in the face that you could do in Borderlands 1. And then, Borderlands 2 comes out and you start running backwards and shooting at a dude and he rolls to the side, and like, oh, well that's not fun anymore. Now I've got to like, chase him and actually aim and work harder. And I guess that's just, I'm sure it is, like I said, it's a much better game and like a more challenging experience. But I like challenging games. I think maybe it was just jarring when I first started playing it. Like now I know, like, okay, shoot a dude and start aiming to one side because he's just gonna roll, and there's some skill involved in that and everything. But yeah, just like it ends up being like, not like I could just zone out and play Borderlands 1 forever. Like it was kind of like just a comfort food, just dumb game to play and explore. And Borderlands 2 is more like, there are more missions, there are more things to kind of like manage, and it's just not as relaxing, I guess, is maybe what it comes down to for me anyway.
See, I like Borderlands 2 more than I like Borderlands 1.
Why would you say that? Like, what do you like about it?
I like there's more of an emphasis on the story. When I played through Borderlands 1, I mean, they didn't have voiced story, and all the reading, I mean, that's fine. I obviously don't have a problem with reading in video games, but I just didn't feel like it conveyed the story as well. So I never felt like, oh, I'm going here because I need to do this. It was just like, okay, now go to this zone and kill a bunch of things. Okay, now go to this zone. I like Borderlands 1. I don't have I'll play it. I think it's a cool game, but I just think, like you said, Borderlands 2 is a much more polished game.
Yeah. Well, and so here's the other thing though, with the story and all that. Like, I mean, I guess thinking back, I guess I didn't realize how much more voice they were doing in comparison. And you're right, like there is a lot more voice stuff, but I feel like the characters they started introducing, like the first game they had, you meet Zed pretty quickly. He's a little bit over the top, but it was like a little more restrained, and like the enemies and bosses were more kind of colorful and crazy. Where Borderlands 2 is just like everyone is freaking nuts, and that's I like it well enough, but I feel like it goes a little too far. Where Borderlands 1, like it was actually, there were times where it felt a little more like melancholy and lonely, and I actually kind of like that, empty feeling world. Like it's, like you're just exploring this wasteland that could have anything in it. And Borderlands 2 feels less that way to me. It's like, because they had the money to do it, they kind of filled the world up a little bit more and made it a little bit easier to get around. Just like more of the catch a ride stations and things like that, I guess. And it's, it took away some of the vibe for me, I suppose.
I see. I mean, I never rode. I always I've played both. And I'm playing through the pre-sequel with people. I think the game's more fun with other people. And
I haven't gotten around to the pre-sequel, and I would like to try out, mainly I just want to play it to try out the characters at this point, I think. But I would like to finish Borderlands 2 first, and honestly I should probably just switch and play it on PC, but then I'd have to start over because I was playing it on 360.
Right.
So I think I would enjoy the gunplay more on PC. Just mouse and keyboard easier to aim. So
I prefer mouse and keyboard when it comes to first-person shooters. Now that I play a lot of them.
Yeah, and I just haven't been in that world forever because I didn't have a PC until like the beginning of this year. And as some of you probably know, had Kurt, who's been on the stream before, had him help me build one. And it's actually, it's supposed to be a Hackintosh, but I haven't gotten around to doing the Hackintosh part yet. I've just been running it as a PC with Windows. But it's nice. Like I did some stuff that would probably be sacrilege for some people, but like installed this plugin to switch the control and the control keys around so they match like the command control setup on the Mac keyboard. So except for the fact that I have to like struggle with Windows every once in a while, I don't really realize I'm using a Windows machine, I suppose. But then I can just play my Steam games.
Yes, which is good. I mean, you have Steam, so you might as well use it.
Yeah, because I had bought games on sale and everything that I couldn't play, period. And I had always been planning to buy a PC at some point, and finally just did it.
So you're moving the buckles around on the Elementalist?
Well, I'm just I was repainting them. I guess switching them. That's what you mean, like putting the bigger. I thought it would be cooler to have the bigger one here, kind of on the forefront, and move this one, make it a little smaller and down to the side. And I'm making it better match this concept art you can see in the background here. The colors are really purple because he's I haven't finished that specific part, but he's going to be doing some fire magic or something along those lines, kind of up here on the staff, so it's got this like reddish pinkish glow just to make it look cool.
You want to show everybody that piece? I don't know if everyone's seen it, like the full one.
Yeah, I can click off here. So that's the concept art that's going to be going out as the art prints. Basically the only thing left to do is a couple of environmental little things I need to touch up, and then add the fire there, and then I'll get those printed.
I see someone's missing too, which makes me sad.
The bard? Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, actually I had sketched a bard in here. She looked pretty ridiculous. And I will probably add her to the painting at some point, but I decided I probably shouldn't send that out as part of the Kickstarter rewards, because then people would be like, oh crap, like the bard's in the game now. No, just in the concept art. Sorry guys. Like I didn't want to get people excited for no reason.
I still hold to the opinion that you're lying and that the bard is really going to be in the game. Secret super Easter egg unlocked.
I'm sure we would all enjoy it. Like, yeah, I mean, if I had the time to do an Easter egg, that would probably be it. I probably shouldn't say that because then it's not as Easter eggy, but whatever. Yeah,
it's not going to be in, so it doesn't really matter.
Like, well, basically, if we're able to do an expansion at some point, there probably will be a bard.
Yeah, I'm really
Although
surprised
I thought the bard was like, was the bard like second place or third place, or I don't remember now.
The Templar beat the bard.
Yeah, well, I think everybody beat the bard pretty much. So.
The huntsman didn't.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was Beastkeeper, Assassin, Elementalist, Templar, Bard, Huntsman.
Yeah, so next to the last place.
Yeah. Which really surprised me. Just goes to show you, because everyone on the forums loves the Bard, or loved the Bard.
Yeah. I think having a character that sort of looked like a ninja, just like, for anyone who wasn't part of Team Bard, they just went for ninjas.
Oh yeah, no, totally. Ask Doom why he thinks the Assassin one. Total ninja.
Yeah.
You heard the Bard is in the game, Baker said so. See, Baker, it's too late.
It's starting. Yeah.
It's already starting. Yep.
I'll put a dead bard somewhere just to satisfy you guys.
There you go.
Just find the skeleton in the drop somewhere.
Oh, make me sad. I'm not surprised.
You're not surprised by?
Oh, sorry. I'm not surprised that the huntsman didn't win.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, it's probably the most boring design out of those. Like, I like the huntsman, but I think maybe I just needed to spice up the design a little more too. I think I was kind of like running out of steam at that point a little bit, but I like that guild a lot, and now the assassin's part of that guild. I mean, they're kind of like snipers, and like they're not totally cold-hearted, but they are kind of the most like, well, I'm good at killing things.
Yeah.
Animals or people or whatever.
Having learned more about each individual class, I don't know if my votes would have been as locked in as they were.
Yeah, well, and it is something that we've developed more over time. Like when we first ran that poll, all the classes and guild ideas were, I think, just a lot more stereotypical than kind of what has grown in the lore that we've worked on since then.
Yeah, I actually let one other person move one of my votes. She's the one that helped me actually get the game, because I wouldn't have been able to without a little bit of help at that point.
Mm-hmm.
My credit card was seized because there's a lot of people who use like card readers down here to try to take credit card information.
Mm-hmm.
So someone had tried to make a withdrawal on my account, so
so they just kind of locked it down.
They just locked it. So the day I wanted to put it in, so I just used her card and kind of finangled it around. So it's like you get a vote and some other stuff.
Yeah.
Just pay it back. And she was the one who voted for the assassin because purple.
Oh, well, tell her I'm sorry, because the assassin may no longer be purple.
No longer purple.
That's what you get for voting just based on color.
Exactly. I was like, no other reason? Nope, purple. She's the purple class. I'm like, okay. Whatever reason you want to put into it, that's fine with me. And I voted for Elementalist, and we both were like, yeah, we want to see the Bard in. So we split the vote with Bard.
Yeah.
But now I'm sad, because I think I would have actually voted for the Templar instead of the Elementalist. Just knowing how spears work and stuff like that, having had the chance to use them in the game. Stuff has to look epic, lol, lol, lol. Public opinion. Huntsman looks too common. And total bardification mod. Yeah, that's one thing. I mean, people might... I don't know how easy it would be to mod in classes, but...
The real difficulty is just making the assets for them. If you know Spine, you could probably make a super simple, not highly animated version of a class, or copy a... Well, the easiest way to do it would be to take a pre-existing class and basically just kind of replace parts on them. they wouldn't be as like they wouldn't have much unique motion or nuance. They would have the same kind of walk cycle as another character or whatever, but that would be the way to do it fast and easy if you don't want to spend the however many hours we typically spend animating one of these guys.
Mm-hmm. You hear that, modders? Go get to it now. Start learning Spine.
Start learning Spine, yes. And I'm happy to tell everyone, yes, please support the Spine guys, because they've been super helpful, and they're making a really good piece of software, and it's getting better all the time.
Wasn't one of the latest Rayman games made in Spine?
I don't think that's true, unless there's one that's on iPhone or something that used it. I mean, Spine is similar to that Ubisoft tech, I think, but I don't know. You might be talking about something I don't know about.
I can look it up while you draw.
I thought there was a rumor about that Ubisoft tech being made public, or well, maybe not public, but for sale or something, at least usable by people outside of Ubisoft. But I never heard anything else about it, so maybe that got killed.
I did not hear that. Didn't the Crysis engine just come out in public?
I feel like every engine is becoming publicly accessible or free to use and learn on, and then you kind of give them a percentage kickback if you make a game with it. It seems like that's how the whole that whole industry is shifting. And I mean, at some point I think Kobe's mentioned, but we would really like to make our engine available or for sale or something at some point. So I mean, who knows when that would happen? It definitely needs a bit more work and has zero documentation except what's in Kobe's head. So
right.
All of that would need to happen. So we're a few years out from that kind of stuff, but I think that's kind of like Kobe's ultimate goal, ultimate personal goal, and I think would make sense for our company. I mean, especially since we've invested so much kind of time and money, even way back before the Kickstarter, just working on this custom engine that will eventually support as many platforms as we can. I mean, that's something that there isn't really. I mean, Unity's the big dog out there, and Unity at this point is available for pretty much everything. And they've definitely. It used to be that Unity, it was really hard to do 2D stuff in Unity, but I think they've added a lot more support for that recently. So I mean, yeah, we would at that point we would probably be competing with Unity would suck, but for us it's just kind of well, we can offer maybe certain things that they don't, or build in some of our tools to make specific kinds of games. I don't know if anyone has thoughts on that, or if there are any developers or hobbyist developers out there that have that would someday want to use our engine rather than Unity. I would be interested to hear what people would that we could do that Unity doesn't, or if we did a different model than they do or something like that. I don't know.
The fragile
I'd just be
engine.
Curious. Yeah, we would change the name. That's Kobe's self-deprecating name for it is fragile.
Yeah.
It's actually not very fragile. If you've played the game, you know that. I mean, there are definitely bugs with the game, but in general, everything that Kobe writes is very stable. I think compared to when I worked at a former company and we were developing games for the DS and everything. I would say in general, from my experience, game development is not as stable as Delver's Drop has been.
I mean, I can only think of a couple bugs that are really game breaking, and they're mostly in the latest version.
But there probably aren't that many crashes, or at least historically have not been that many crashes, right? I'm sure there have been some, or specific things you could do that would crash, but I've seen games that crashed way more than that when they were in development.
Well, 0.6.3 would crash a lot.
Yeah. What was causing those crashes?
The room generation would cause there were rooms that you guys put in that weren't fully loaded.
Yeah,
so
I think
when it tried to load the next level of the drop, if it had one of those rooms in the generation, it would.
I think that was a problem with something we had messed up on, just building the rooms, like the room files, versus like anything that had to do with code. Not that it's more excusable that way or something, but at least like I could say pretty much without a doubt that I don't think that was Kobe's fault. Although he could probably or would probably want to write something so that if it tries to load a room that has that kind of error, it doesn't crash. It just like kicks the room out and tries to load a different one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know that because for a long time that was the only one that was there, but especially when I was still recording the game for however long that build was, I would lose 5 or 6 runs a day.
Hmm.
It was it's not your. I mean, I guess it is, but it's not a problem.
It's our fault, but you don't want to blame us for it too much.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It might have been your fault, but it's in the past, and I cursed the game more than I cursed you guys for sure.
Yeah, I probably would have just told you, just stop playing our game. You've put so many hundreds of hours in. You've put in your penance or your dues or whatever.
And speaking of miserable weapons to start with, the weapon, the Mangler, that the rogue started off with in 0.6.3. I will never forgive you for that. Like every successive build, the weapon got worse to use.
Oops.
In relation to damage to the enemy. A little bit of insight from actually having played the game for so long. Oh, I like that. I like the Beastkeeper eyes with the helmet.
Yeah, I liked it too. Like having the veil there is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
So, I mean, it makes me think that like maybe I should have shown the faces of the classes a little bit more. Like, I mean, I sort of cheated with the Beastkeeper because she's wearing a veil. You can see her nose and everything a little bit better, but I rather like that look. I mean, it's not too late to change it, I guess, but it's hard to. Well, you know, originally these classes just had like eyeballs and a smile and everything was black, and I started trying to add like some subtle shadow to just give them a little more dimensionality and everything, and it's hard to make them. Well, it makes their skin look like it's made out of oil or something, you know. And I mean, what we've talked about. This is kind of my like. After the fact justification, I suppose, but that the Delvers use a kind of magic to hide their faces for their secret deeds and so forth.
Right. It's kind of like in Oblivion where you got the gray wolf or gray fox's mask.
Yeah, I mean they're kind of or like a Zorro mask. I kind of imagine them doing like a little magic kind of hand swipe and whoosh, you know, now my face is in shadow every time I go out in public. I haven't completely figured out exactly how that fits into society as a whole, because obviously, like, you know, we've talked on the forums at least, or you and I have discussed how, you know, the Delvers are almost part of like I hate calling it a religion, but that's the closest term for what it would be, I guess. You know, they have kind of like a special mission given to them by the gods, and so becoming a Delver though is more just like, I mean, you know, kids would probably say like, I want to be a Delver when I grow up, because they're kind of like the known adventurers, like most other knights and so on are, you know, kind of part of the political structure, just more like soldiers, where the Delvers are like the adventurers and they, you know, explore and that sort of thing. But parents would probably tell their kids, no, you're not going to be a Delver when you know, they're all like miscreants and criminals and ne'er-do-wells and so on. But, you know, but they're kind of, it's like they're not totally trusted, but they're respected, is kind of how I see them in relation to society, but they're definitely like not trusted by the sort of established political structure and so on, you know, because they could be a threat, and have been kind of hunted as both as like heretics according to certain religions, and just as like political opposition by government structures.
Right. They're more like they're the Robin Hoods, the
Yeah.
Zorros.
So, but then you have to kind of think like, well, okay, so if if the sorcerer, I guess the sorcerer is the easiest example of like we had written some backstory about them like being these sort of shop owners, like they kind of have like it's like a spirit speakeasy kind of joint, where they sell like potions or like spirit vials, which is is typically illegal. Because they've got to get that spirit energy from somewhere, so they might like kind of siphon it off of people or animals or things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been trying to figure out like, well, so that seems pretty evil. We probably want them to be a little less evil, but it would still be like sort of illegal, like a speakeasy type establishment. And maybe they have like kind of a legitimate storefront or someone who helps them run that, but they their true business is kind of like behind closed doors or in a secret entrance, or say the password and getting kind of to the basement or whatever.
Right.
So I think maybe that's the only tweak that we really kind of need to make that make sense, because when we had written up the classes and kind of what their day job was, so to speak, that was the one that seemed the most public, except maybe the gladiators, who are often kind of hired as bouncers and that sort of thing. But that makes a little more sense. I mean, like, if you're, if there's like a tavern or something that needs a bouncer, like of course they would hire a gladiator. They don't really care if they're a delver or who they're kind of aligned with. They just need someone with lots of muscle. So, but yeah,
and they're the easiest one to get a hold of.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That sounds cool. Yeah, having seen some of the write-ups, there has been some evolution over time with the classes, which I think is really cool.
And I think I probably need to do like one more audit before we finalize some of the dialogue and everything. Because I would like to have a few kind of backstory surprises, but it's also like I didn't really realize this at the time when we were starting out, because, well, I've never really written much dialogue for games anyway. I feel like I'm an okay writer, but it's not really something I've ever worked on a lot. But the complication with the game, but I think what makes it somewhat unique is that when you're playing a class, you're not playing like there's not, Sasha the Rogue is not like the only rogue. If you play as Sasha the Rogue and you see her name like on your menu screen, if you die, then the next rogue you play as is just someone else who's been captured, like a different rogue,
right,
in the jail cell. Which is pretty atypical for games. I off the top of my head, except like there's Final Fantasy Tactics, you kind of, and other tactics games. See you later, Nathan. You have some expendable characters, but you usually do have like a non-expendable kind of main character, which is not the case for us at all. There's not like a single permanent character. There are just like permanent classes.
Right.
I don't. Can anyone on the stream think of another game that has a similar approach where like all of your characters are expendable in that sense, and you have what's that?
XCOM.
Yeah.
I mean, you have, I guess, the person who's calling the shots in the background, but that character is really never named, and
yeah, it's just kind of a proxy for the player, like this invisible outside force or something.
Yeah. So that's the only one that springs to mind instantly, is XCOM.
I'm thinking I'll give these guys a giant chin. Actually, it'll make them a little more unique.
Well, he's supposed to be Arnold.
Yeah, Element Arnold or something like that. Was that
Arnold. Yeah, Doom put it up in the beginning.
So how did that come about? Was it based on some of the concept art because he was so tall or something?
He was so tall, and when you guys were talking about him being like kind of beefy, I guess we all just kind of ran away with it. Was when you guys did the Butcher Diablo 3 hardcore. I mean, Torchlight and Diablo like games really aren't in the same vein as Delver's Drop, I'd say.
What was that in relation to?
Mason offered up Diablo 3 hardcore as another game where like
or any roguelike, I guess, for that matter, which is where that hardcore mode comes from.
Yeah. But I still would say that it's not quite the same, because I guess Diablo
I mean, that is where we got the idea, though, was like roguelikes and having these, it's like a one-shot sort of thing. So we kind of managed to be like hardcore in the sense that your character dies, but like more of a standard, more forgiving RPG in the sense that our classes are persistent. But anyway.
Well, the thing with Diablo is it's when your character dies and you start over, it's not, you start over from the beginning of the storyline.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in Delver's Drop and other roguelikes, it's not you starting the entire story over. It's you just picking another character who sent down the drop.
Did we talk last time or recently on the stream about how that like hardcore mode or hard mode versus if we were even going to have a hardcore mode?
You broached the subject last time, but
yeah,
we didn't
that's
really
what I thought.
It's the same mechanic, but it's not the same narrative, which is what Baker was asking for.
Mm-hmm.
But which, unlike what XCOM is, because when you lose a character, the story continues and a new character comes and takes the place.
Yeah.
So I guess since you did broach it again, so non-hardcore mode and opposed to hardcore mode. So when you die in, let's say, regular mode, do you start in the beginning, or do you start on the beginning of the level that you died on?
The idea that of what I would like to do, and I mean, some of this is still kind of tied up in trying to get level generation to work properly, but what I would like to do is if you die, you will, at least a certain percentage of the time, you'll leave behind an undelver, which is like the undead version of the character you were just playing as, who has your weapons and items and stuff. So if you kind of powered up that character and they had an awesome weapon, then that means the undelver is more powerful. So you're in kind of gameplay, you go back to the jail. So you can pick a new character to drop down. So you can pick any class, any of the levels and experience and stuff you gained. And I've been thinking about trying to tie this into lore, which again is kind of just an after the fact justification, but some way that Delvers guilds have, kind of a they have like a kind of communal I feel like there was a term for it, but it's kind of like if one of them develops a skill, then the whole guild kind of develops that skill as like, they have this connection magically just by being part of that guild. But anyway, so yeah, your skills and things are persistent, at least to a certain degree. You can respec in the jail if you'd like, probably just for free, but you can't respec while you are playing, more than likely. So if you build like a horrible build, you can just kind of jump in a pit, go back to the guild, re-spend all your skill points, and drop down again. And so you would drop down to the last level you were playing at, and there might be an undelver running around, depending on how all that went on your last playthrough. And if you kill the undelver, you can get your weapons and items back. If you lose too many times on that level, though, like let's say if you drop down and you die 5 times on that level without making progress to the next level, then the drop would probably close, and you would have to, next time you drop down, you would go like 1 level less deep. So if you were on level like 5-2 and you kept dying, then the drop would close off at some point. You could only drop down to 5-1 and have to play it again. So if you really start screwing up, you have this like retrograde, like anti-progress going on.
So kind of a hard a handbrake to stop you from just kind of, I guess, grinding away at it.
Yeah, but also I guess the idea was kind of like, well, I mean, you could get to a point where either your skill level kind of isn't ready for a certain level in the game, or you keep kind of beating your head against a level where you're not getting very good drops of weapons or things like that. So it's kind of like to help players out to a certain degree, like you would, the game would just kind of like force you, and you could probably do this manually somehow, like close off the drop, like kind of make it so that you would drop less far down the drop. So if you're really struggling on level 5 and you're like, man, I really just want to like go back to level 4, get some better weapons, and I know I can beat level 4 now because I've done it once, so I'll start there, get some better weapons, and then go to level 5 again, instead of just kind of starting from scratch on level 5. We'll probably have some weapons that get generated and a store also in the jail, so you will be able to buy some weapons before you drop down, so you won't have to start with the mangler or whatever every single time. But that's the kind of the upside of, well, like the benefit that you get from playing kind of as far as you can and like beating several levels at once is that you'll have better gear just by playing, like surviving longer. You have a greater chance of finding more and better gear, and if you die, you lose that unless you can reclaim it from the Undelver. So yeah, if you die, it's forgiving in the sense that, yeah, you can drop down to the last level you were playing, but it's unforgiving in the sense that, like, well, your gear is kind of crap now.
Okay.
So that's the balance that we're going for. And yeah, you can spend, and gold will be persistent, or if we need to balance it, I'll probably just do the Dragon Quest thing where each time you die, you like lose a portion of your gold as kind of like a tax to the jailer or something like that. You know, I'll make up some like lore excuse probably and have some little jokes in the game about it. Yeah, so yeah, we might have you lose a little bit of gold, but you'll still have some to spend. So if you're like really struggling, what you could do is like keep playing, you know, grind out a little bit of gold, and then like you're like, okay, I've got enough gold to buy a good weapon in the jail shop, so I'm, you know, grind some more, die again, but then start over, you know, pick my favorite class, which is the rogue or whatever, go buy a really good weapon and drop down, and then hopefully do a little better that run.
Doom seems displeased.
Oh? What does Doom not like?
Says, I messed up, try again. That fucked up the floor, just try it again. I don't know if that's displeasure or what. He says that nope, that makes progress meaningless.
Well, sorry, I might need to go on Twitch and like read that little. Actually, could you copy paste on Skype that his text?
Yeah.
Because I don't have the chat open right now, since it's hard for me to read and draw and talk all at the same time, and it makes my computer run slowly.
Yeah, no problem. There you go. And of course, hardcore mode would be when you die, you go to the beginning again.
Yeah. So, well, actually, so Doom, could you write in there what your suggestion would be? Like, what? I guess I'm not completely understanding which part you don't like. So I'm just kind of curious, because I like this kind of, you know, let's brainstorm a little bit on the stream and see what people do or don't like. Or maybe there's some part of that perhaps I misspoke or didn't explain clearly enough.
If you play through the same level again, you have a better drop rate.
Is that what he's requesting?
That's what Mason asked.
We probably wouldn't have a better drop rate. The more you play, it would just be like a constant. But I mean, there will probably be certain character skills in kind of the skill tree that would give you a better drop rate. You obviously have to unlock that ability or whatever. But so especially the rogue will probably be able to upgrade a skill tree or path on her skill tree that enables better drops. So if you are getting horrible drops and want to do better, you could just like respec in that direction.
Right. It's more like rambling. Dude says basically, if death is a slap on the wrist or worse, it actually is a desirable option. What's the point of including it?
So
I think he's saying if dying lets you retry things without really having any kind of negative, then what's the point of including that, I guess?
Of having death at all?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, since you will lose weapons and items, I guess.
You can't do it with the sorcerer. Well, just pick the gladiator for that floor.
Yeah. And
wouldn't picking a new class put you back at the start?
probably not. Like, the idea was that you could, anytime you died, you could pick a different class at that point. And so, yeah, I mean, it would probably be pretty easy in that sense that, like, yeah, but I do want all floors or all levels to be playable by all classes. But,
yeah, he's basically encouraging you to kill yourself to make the game easier.
oh, well, I don't know that killing yourself would really make the game easier. I mean, yeah, like, that one... easier in the sense that, yes, you could grind out some money, but that would be where, I would prefer to just balance that by having you lose a percentage, like 20, like a Borderlands, you lose a certain percentage of money every time you have to respawn. I mean, Borderlands is super forgiving in that way, but imagine Borderlands if every time you died, you lost all of your weapons. But started, like, you respawn the same way you do. Like, how much harder does that make that experience? And, I mean, on the flip side, I guess, like, what are the other things that we could potentially, like, once we kind of get to the point that we're able to balance that feature and just, have it more fully fleshed out, I guess, like, what ideas for Doom or anyone else on the stream, what ideas do you have about, like, what you would like to see us do to make the game more challenging yet fair? And keep in mind, I do want this to be a game where it's, like, it's not so hardcore that, it's... like I would like for my girlfriend to be able to play this game is kind of my kind of perhaps like selfish reasoning or litmus test. She probably won't play it a ton, but just like, I want it to be accessible to her, and like, let's just say that she decided, okay, I really want to beat Delver's Drop. That is like a personal goal of mine. In the next year I want to beat Delver's Drop. I would want that to be possible for her, like for the average player to beat it. Now, they probably would not get the best path in the story. They probably would not find all the secrets. But I want it to, and so maybe we make, like, if you beat it kind of the easy way, you get like a really bad ending, or bad ending. Like, you get an ending to the game, but it's like you haven't truly succeeded in the story. Like, your goals in the story have not fully been met. You just kind of got to the end, right? And so that's the structure I'm trying to create, is one where, like, you could say, like, okay, I finished the game, but I didn't beat it. And to really beat it, to like master it, you would probably have to basically like start, like, flip the switch or whatever we're gonna make in the drop chamber to like reset the whole drop to level 1, start a new character, and you could, in this case, you could start with a fully leveled up character, but go like all the way down in one shot. So the only way to get the true ending will probably be to like go from start to finish, from level 1 all the way to the end with a single character without dying. For both like kind of mechanical reasons, like certain things that if you ever die, you will lose them, and you would have to go back to level 1 to get that item or that kind of story bit again. So there will be things that are permanently lost, I guess, in addition to items, in respect to the story.
Mason says an arena battle through waves of enemies to test character build. I think that's a bad idea, personally. I don't think that...
Sorry, what kind of arena? I didn't catch part of that.
Just like a testing arena for your build.
There will be areas in the jail where you could kind of like... I mean, there will at least be like a tutorial hallway of sort, or like tutorial set of rooms that, we'll probably have... Like, you wouldn't be able to gain experience there, but yeah, we might have something where you... and I mean, I guess we probably wouldn't let you go back and change classes, but I mean, it has been a problem at PAX, though. Like, people will choose a class, and they just, because of our non-traditional character selects, people don't really understand what's going on the first time around, and so they'll pick the rogue, and then they'll be like, I want a gladiator. So they go over to the gladiator's cage and try pressing A, and we're like, sorry, you're just the rogue now. So, I mean, just for like ease of just player convenience, I think it would be nice to be able to, like, pick a class, run around the jail, and then be like, oh, I hate, I'm playing the sorcerer or whatever. Everyone hates the sorcerer except Kyle. So they pick the sorcerer. They're like, man, I hate this class. Like, I mean, if the fact, like, I would personally, kind of as a designer, I would like to be like, nope, you just have to play as a sorcerer now, too bad. But the fact that they could just go down to level 1 and kill themselves, jump in a hole or whatever, and respawn, like because the game already allows for them to, within a couple minutes or so, however long it takes for them to find a hole to jump down, allows them to pick another character after that. We might as well just make it so that there's less friction in that process, and you can just mess around with the character for a few minutes in the jail and be like, sorry, I don't like this one, and choose a different one.
So Doom says, grant players lives. If they die, they get to restart the current floor, and when life is lost, you get to repick your class and can face an undelve to reclaim your gear, and then it's over. Then full game reset. I guess I'm even more hardcore than Doom, which seems to me a scary thought. I say you die once and you start over from the beginning again. There are no lives once you die.
Well,
you leave an undelver to maybe give you an edge on the floor that you die, but you always start from the beginning.
Well, and I mean that's okay. So, well, I'll address Doom's first. So what Doom said is actually very similar to my. And yeah, maybe we should just show the player a counter for this. But yeah, it is very similar to what I was saying about if you die too many times on floor 5-2, it kind of your progress, like it goes back to 5-1 and back to 4-3 or whatever, like as you keep dying. So that's kind of similar. Although I guess like Doom is saying, like if you die a certain number of times, like you kind of
go to 1-1. Yeah. If you die 5 times, you go to 1-1.
Yeah, and I guess. And that could be okay. Like I could see that working if, like, let's say every time you make progress, you gain another kind of chance, or let's say you've got 3 chances or 5 chances or lives, for lack of a better term. So you've got 5 lives, and if you lose all those 5 lives, you start back at 1-1. But if you're on 5-2 and let's say you've only got 2 lives left, if you make it to 5-3, that your lives increase 1 more, or maybe you have to complete a whole zone, like you've got to go all the way through zone 5, and then
I
you
think
get
you
1
should
more
add quests. Since I know you guys are going to have missions and stuff, or at least that was the idea later on.
What kind of quests, or like quests to get more lives, or is that kind of where you're going?
Like
or
just have an NPC be like, okay, if you do X, Y, and Z, then I'll give you another life when you finish this level.
That makes sense. And I mean, I don't want to.
That way you aren't guaranteed to get more lives. But
I could see that.
If you try, I mean, this is going with Doom's idea. Like I said, my idea is way not nicer, I guess. Yeah, well, and here, instead of calling it lives, I would like to make it some kind of functionally the same, but just for the theme, I'd probably make it some kind of a crystal or something that you have to like insert into the drop to like keep the drop open. So like if maybe there could be quests or something you can do to get like extra crystals in your little stash of things or key or whatever it is. And so if you've got 5 of these, you can keep the drop open, and like every time you die, you've got to like unlock the drop again to that level. And so if you're out of those keys, you can't, kind of from the jail, you can't unlock the drop, so you've got to start at level 1 again. I think that makes a lot of I guess the question would then be like, if you've got a character down on 5-2, and how did their keys get like transferred to but that I could figure out a way to make that work kind of story wise, like they're unlocking, like keeping something unlocked at 5-2, and when you don't have any more keys to like unlock it, then it closes off, regardless of kind of where or how it's unlocked. So anyway, I think I think Kobe would like that idea too. He's not around right now because we're at 5:30. Yeah,
that's fine. I don't have anywhere to be.
Okay.
I'm having fun. So sometimes I don't know if I've said this on the stream, but I actually start getting a headache if I'm like on a stream and talk too long, or if I'm wearing the wrong headset, I guess maybe. I think last week I had to switch to a different headset and it was crushing my brain, and I got off the stream and like went home and just like laid on my bed, and my girlfriend called me and I was like, hey, I just finished this stream, my brain feels like it's drunk because I was hot and my headset was on too tight, and I just like felt miserable.
Oh jeez, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
You mentioned it to me, but you haven't said it on stream.
Yeah, so that that can happen if I'm not careful. So sometimes I have to be like, okay, this stream has a limit. But today we're going strong. We're doing okay. Although I am gonna unplug my headset so it stops buzzing in my ear. When it's charging, it makes this high pitched sort of sound.
Geez.
It's not very noticeable if I'm talking, but
there needs to be casual and then hardcore. Well, I mean, I don't. That's what Mason says, but I don't agree with that either. Yeah. And Doom says that's daft for a roguelike. And
I think what we just kind of brainstormed out is like a nice combination of it's like, yeah, I mean, you have lives, but this is, or keys or whatever, but it's a very, very limited resource, and it's very difficult to get more. And even if you had like tons of keys, like let's say you somehow figured out a way to get 20, they're still pretty limited, and you still, every time you die, you lose your item. So there's still like quite a bit of punishment for death, but it's not like a pure kind of like start over completely. And so, but the thing is, like, we could, I guess, people have asked for a setting in the menu where you can like turn on hardcore mode like Diablo, but I'd rather just integrate it into the game. So if you really want to play like totally hardcore, we just make it really easy where you can like, go talk to the dude in the jail who lets you respec, and just maybe there's an option with him where you just say like, I want to like get rid of all my levels, I want to start this character over. So at any time you could start a character over completely, and like, because for someone like you who plays the game hopefully when we're done we'll still want to play the game for hundreds of hours, you may want to like, I
want to play the game right now.
Yeah, well, yes, but like, let's say the game is done, you're planning on playing it for 1,000 hours. I mean, you might want to, like, any given day of the week be like, I'm kind of sick of playing at the rogue on level 30 or whatever it caps out at. I'm going to zero him out or her out again and just start from 1 and, like, level the rogue back up. I want that experience. Like, I would like for that to be something that you don't really have to do through the menu, or you don't have to reset the whole game. Like, I can keep my level 10 Elementalist, but reset the rogue just for the hell of it.
Right.
And so, or the other thing is, like, let's say you have a level 30 rogue, you could just talk to the respec guy and be like, zero out all my skills. And that's the same thing as going back to level 1. Because we don't have like by default kind of stat progression for the characters. Like, they don't get more life as they level up to like level 10 or whatever. It's just you just get skill points.
Doom says, plus what's cool about lives is you get rewarded for doing good at earlier levels, which means you have more chances at later levels. I mean, I guess it's weird because I'm really not a hardcore gamer, but I guess since I have played Delver's Drop for so long, I've gotten to a point where I want a challenge. Like in it was in the PAX build that you guys put out that I got to play, I guess, at PAX. I would actually just toss my weapon away, and I'd only go and try to beat it with fists.
Yeah. Which
you can't do damage.
Oh, and you couldn't do damage?
I think you can only do like one damage.
One damage,
yeah.
Exactly. So this might be interesting for people who don't know, but the fists are actually encoded as a weapon. It's like in the weapon sheet at the very top, there's like, here's the rogue fist and here's the gladiator fist. So we can actually give everyone different properties for their default like punch without if they don't have a weapon. I forget now how.
I want there to be an achievement to beat the game.
Yes, for sure.
Just your fist. With just your fist.
With the sorcerer?
With the sorcerer.
I'm gonna make a different animation for their, like a more easier to see animation for their punch, where their fist will get really big and like not super cartoony, but big enough you can see. I'll probably give them a little more range with it too. Like the shortest range weapons are pretty terrible and just like don't feel good, because if you're facing up, the character's head practically hides them. So I really need them to go a little bit farther. So yeah, it'll get slightly easier than it currently is to use the fist, but it definitely won't do much damage, and might even have it, especially for the sorcerer. Okay, here, you'll love this or hate it, both. You'll love it right now as an idea, but hate your life later. The sorcerer, because he would be, he's basically got no muscle and has never trained in martial arts. He would probably damage himself, like a 10% chance he takes 1 HP of damage by using his fists. So Just be ready for that.
Now I want the achievement even more.
Yeah.
Because I do hate myself.
Oh, don't say that.
I remember. I remember we were talking about it the other night. But I would try. I mean, I've tried to break the game on every level that I can probably imagine trying to break the game.
Yeah.
Where I would make, I guess, like a hockey game out of batting bats around since they were so bouncy and slidey. Same with the original Slimes. It was always fun to try to try to corral that. I really wish you guys had online multiplayer. I know it's not feasible.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's honestly like it's something that so many people have asked for. Well, we've got to make the game a success first and get it out and, fulfill all the stretch goals. But I would love at some point to have like an expansion. I don't know if it'd be free or paid or what, like who knows at this point, but have some kind of expansion where it's like, okay guys, now with online multiplayer.
Yeah.
Because I think, but we really do need to make PvP fun and interesting first, which is part of the reason for a lot of the kind of rejiggering of the of combat that we're doing and adding things like I think you and I were talking. I start forgetting our conversation if we talked about this on the stream or if we just talked on Skype at some point. But just for the sake of if anyone on the stream doesn't know, we've been adding what amounts to poise damage, like Dark Souls has. So instead of like right now, if you hit an enemy, they are. I think they're instantly stunned on every hit, or at least if you do damage, they're stunned. And so what we're doing, and it instantly made enemies much more aggressive and much more actually fun and kind of challenging to fight. But if you hit them, you'll knock them back a little bit, but they keep coming because you're just giving them some knockback in the physics system, but they can keep running at you. And so if you hit them long enough, you'll deplete their, we just called it poise in the code. We'll probably have a different name for it in the game. But you're actually depleting this kind of invisible stat. And when they run out of that, then they become stunned or dizzied, or, some enemies might have different results. But it was definitely like, I could tell immediately, it was like a very positive improvement the moment we integrated it. Actually Aaron, our programming intern, our part-time guy, he was working on that, and he's a big Dark Souls player. I think he's got like a few hundred hours, and so that was kind of fun for him, and he had some good ideas too because he's played a lot more of Dark Souls than I have. And I mean, the goal wasn't really even to make it like Dark Souls. It just sort of turned out that made sense. Because I really wanted to do something where where you didn't stun enemies instantly. And because originally, I mean, this is probably just like, us just having bad ideas sometimes, or just like trying to do things quickly to get more of the game done. But originally, an enemy stun was a property just on the enemy itself. Like, so slimes would have 0.25 second stun time. So every time you hit them, slime is stunned for 0.25 seconds. And the more I thought about that, the more I realized, in working on weapon stats, like, why would the enemy have a default stun time? Like, shouldn't you have weapons that stun enemies more than others? And so the plan was to like move that stat to weapons, but then you've got to think about like, some enemies should be stunned less, or should recover faster. And so and then in the end, it basically resulted in having this, the rat has 20 poise, for lack of a better term, and a wolf or whatever would have 50 or something like that. And so and you have weapons that have, all weapons have like a certain amount of poise they decrease when you hit with them. So you could have a weapon that does very little damage but does huge amounts of poise. So the goal is to hit an enemy a couple times and you don't do a lot of damage, but you stun them so quickly that then they're kind of like frozen, and you can basically just beat them up while they're kind of stun locked. So that's kind of the current thinking, or like where we're kind of currently trending.
Right. I think it sounds great. Doom says online co-op. You know what you need to do, and I do know what I need to do. I want to make Delver hockey.
We tried doing something kind of like that, or we were trying to figure out how we could hack the current switches and things so you could do like hockey or soccer basically. And there was no way to keep score, so we would have to add something like that, where there's some kind of switch that keeps like a tally, or you flip it and a number pops up, something like that. which shouldn't be too hard. So we've definitely talked about it. It would just need like a few more kind of properties on the traps and things.
Right. But what my idea was to obviously you'd have to use the classes, but you'd take one of the death hockey puck traps that was in 0.6.3, which I hate. I hate them. I hate them so much. They have ruined more no damage runs than I can count. Just because it's like, oh, I didn't disturb it, and then a goblin will hit it, and it'll just go wild throughout the room, and it's like, well, I'm taking damage in this room.
Yeah, I guess you have Nathen to blame for those. I think.
Yes, I do. Yeah. Why do you think I'm so mean to Nathen all the time?
I didn't notice that you were mean to him.
Oh no, I mean I try not to be, but I don't.
You can't hold back from the latent hate.
Yeah, there's this intense loathing I have for him. No, that's not true. I really I like all of you guys. I don't know. There's this. I don't know if you remember this. I went back and watched this when we did the Christmas special.
The horrible disorganized Christmas special.
Oh, it was great. He was playing, and there was a lot of audio issues. Like we could hear you, but you couldn't hear us on Skype. So I was talking to Miriam and Quaddy, and I had offhandedly mentioned, wow, having put so many hours in this game, it's really terrible watching people be bad at the game, and it was Nathen playing, and it was that right moment that you guys got Skype working again, so instantly it went through. And ever since then, I don't know, I've always felt like I have to give Nathen a little bit of crap.
I see.
Your entire office just like burst out laughing, and it's like, shut up, stop talking to me. It's really funny. I went back and watched that when I was.
I need to watch that again because I totally forgot about that or didn't notice or something. I don't.
I remembered it because Quaddy reminded me a while back that I gave him crap. Well, we'll have to do another Christmas stream. It was a lot of fun.
Okay.
Maybe not you guys officially, but I'll do something.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be fun to do holiday stuff or Christmas or New Year's or whenever.
And you guys played Nuclear Throne and Dungeon of the Endless.
Well, and I do remember we forgot to put we forgot to change the tag of currently playing, and so we basically did Twitch wrong. Like we failed at Twitch that day.
I had to go down to. I was living in Flagstaff then. I had to go down to Phoenix at that point, so I didn't get to see you guys play video games. Doom remembers. Yes, Voss shitting on Nate and Renee both, and it was totally unintentional. I would never have said that if I knew that they were listening. I would have kept that quiet.
So what you're saying is you're okay with saying bad things about people behind their backs? Is that?
No, it's not. I didn't mean it to be like mean or anything like that.
Oh, I know.
That's not who I am. I was trying to be like, wow, I can't. I mean, like everyone who watches me play games, now I understand how they feel.
Well, yeah, you're basically the karate master of Delver's Drop, where you were telling me how you your tactic was to like run around with the assassin and use a weapon that spun you in a 360. So you'd run past an enemy, swing the sword, and basically pinball flipper them into a chasm or something.
That's with the latest build. I started doing that with the assassin. Yeah. I got really good at it.
And then I told you how, or actually it was kind of your idea, but we were talking about having the assassin weapons do more damage over time. So you basically stab something and cause it to bleed, and so it's just you don't do a lot of initial damage, but it's slowly kind of chipping away as you run away from it. So the goal is to jump in, kind of stab and run off. So.
Yeah, the assassin is so fast. I don't know how many people in chat have had a chance to play the assassin. But she's definitely the fastest character. She also doesn't have any shields, so any damage she takes goes right to her hearts. I don't know if you guys are going to continue that with how you've changed health and shield.
Yeah, I probably am going to give her a shield, but we will give her some kind of limitation, or she'll just start with way less shielding by default. I would really like for shields to actually affect your movement speed, so they basically the bigger the shield you have, the slower you move, or something along those lines. Because the way it's going to work, I mean, shields are going to become an equipable item, so you can find them, pick them up, and it changes out the shield you have equipped, which will probably have its own inventory slot. And that shield pieces that are in your with your health, but it also changes some properties on whenever you pull your shield out and actually defend yourself, like how big is that collision box. I'd like to do something where whenever you pull your shield out, there's an initial kind of push, so you can actually like club enemies with it, so the moment you pull it up, I don't know if it'll do damage or just knockback. Maybe some shields would do damage, but that, since shields would at that point have a bunch of properties and they'll actually be listed in the weapon sheet, like weapons, items, and shields, basically all they ended up in the same big data sheet for one reason or another. But what would actually what would happen is like we should be able to add some kind of like a property pretty easily where it kind of slices down the percentage of your acceleration or something. If you use a bigger shield. So the assassin could do it, but I would try to work it so that basically the moment the assassin picks up a big shield, she becomes so slow that it's like so contrary to why you would even use an assassin in the first place that it would just be like not fun to play that way. And so you could just like how people choose to fat roll in Dark Souls or whatever, like you can do it. It's just like not a good way to play the game, or not very rewarding.
Right. Mason says we need more Jebra.
Jebra, the horse beasts.
Yeah, it's a Twitch chat favorite. I don't know why they would sound like mice though. That seems contrary. I mean, and that's probably the point. It's them sounding contrary to what they look like. Isn't
that
there
could
going
be
to
kind of funny.
Isn't there a Jebra boss in the game?
I was planning on doing a giant Jebra. I mean, I guess you could call it a mini boss, but
a mini boss.
The line between like bosses and mini bosses and regular enemies. I mean, there are true like bosses, but those are the big like labor machine things. But I mean, I would like to, but I had a bunch of ideas for enemies that I just wrote down, and we're definitely not going to do all of them just for sake of time and everything. Maybe again could be expansion content or just like future game ideas or whatever. But yes.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was saying, can we talk about the Halls of Lost Sanity for a minute?
Sure. I don't know that we have much much lore built up around them or anything, but we can definitely talk about it.
Tell Baker that fat rolls are super viable. That's a Dark Souls thing.
I would probably, here's the deal, guys. I like to play the most agile character possible. I'll just say that's kind of my typical, like, I like to be able to press a button and things happen instantly and quickly. Otherwise I get frustrated. But yeah, I mean, I've heard about because I listened to Bonfire Side Chat, where I learned tons of things about Dark Souls without actually playing it as much as I should. I'm trying to get there. I haven't actually played this week, unfortunately. But yeah, so I've heard about people like fat rolling through the whole game and everything.
I like playing casters, so armor wasn't really a big thing for me.
What wasn't a big thing?
Armor. I had the Elite Knight chest, Dusk's crown, and some kind of kilt bottom, which I forget where that was from. I think it was from where the Bed of Chaos is around. I forget exactly. It was all, everything but the chest was like caster stuff. That would help me be able to cast as strong as possible.
So it didn't encumber you such that it would cause you to fat roll.
Yeah, exactly. I think I still had Havel's ring, which gives you a higher endurance or equip endurance. So that I had a little bit more armor. That's one change from Dark Souls 1 to Dark Souls 2 that I didn't like. In Dark Souls 2, you didn't start off with a shield. You actually had to like have a certain amount of strength. So it's like if you want to be a pure caster, okay, then you're not going to have a shield the entire game. You better get good at rolling.
Yeah.
It just felt like a breach in the play style. and watching someone, I won't mention his name, so I think he's still here, play Bloodborne, really well. You're doing real well, guy. Good job on beating that boss last night. They don't have a shield in that game either. It just seems to me it's like, but that's what a Souls game is, methodical play.
I think
you're supposed to be cautious.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
What'd you say? You're supposed to be cautious? Was
that you're supposed to be cautious.
Yeah. I think I was reading an article in Edge magazine, which is the only game magazine I subscribe to anymore, but I really like it. That they wanted to, the director of the game, whose name I don't remember now. I think it's actually Miyazaki. I just remembered because it's Miyazaki is also Studio Ghibli, same name. But I read that he wanted to force players to be a lot more aggressive, like where it's more about offense as opposed to defense. And I haven't been keeping up with Bloodborne. I'm actually I'm kind of interested in getting a PS4 at some point. Mainly, the only games I know of that I would want to play are Bloodborne and Destiny. But anyway, yeah, I've been seeing stuff pop up about Bloodborne, and I'm like, ooh, pretty. I want to play it.
I like the set pieces. I like the kind of the gothic world that it's set in, but I'm not a big fan of their enemies. I don't really like what they've done with the bosses and stuff like that.
Just the visual design or gameplay?
Yeah, the visual design. The gameplay is Dark Souls 2's, which I think is inferior to Dark Souls 1, but I'm trying not to be a video game snob. I mean, I'm sure if I played it, I'd feel a little bit different, but just seeing it on a visual spectrum.
Yeah.
All of them are really hairy, and the hair just seems a little too wispy and silky.
Well, and that's probably them really wanting to build tech that the PS4 can now handle, right? So they might have. There's a chance that and I haven't really seen it, but there's a chance they might have overdone it. Well, partly because they wouldn't have had hair before, but also because, oh shit, guys, now we can do hair. Let's just do the most hairy hair that you can possibly do.
Yeah, there's these gigantic, slavering werewolf beasts. It's shouldn't they have matted hair, with blood and viscera and stuff like that? No, it's this. It's like Fabio hair just flowing off of them in beautiful locks. It's nah, I can't. Bloodborne has well-designed bosses. If you say so, Mason. If you say so. I think it's a stylistic difference. I don't. I mean, I don't know. I feel like werewolves and vampires and that sort of thing is just overdone anyway.
Well, and just to clarify, Mason, are you talking about gameplay or the visual design again? Because we were saying the design of the bosses, and then I immediately think I get confused just because we use the term design both for the art direction and for the gameplay design.
And Doom says Bloodborne's bosses are literally all the same with some different SFX slapped on. It's the same assets reused over and over and over, which he and I had talked about before. Visual, oh yeah, no, totally don't agree with you on that. Visually, I think Dark Souls and Dark Souls 2 is better designed visual bosses. They're much more visceral. They're much more gross. When you have a cathedral-sized werewolf hurtling down at you, he shouldn't have hair like Fabio. It breaks. It's I don't know. I've reached a point with technology where I went to Ohio, my ancestral home, last year, almost a year ago, and my parents have one of those high def TV screens, and I sat there and watched it for a few minutes, and I'm just this is too real. It all looked like I could reach out and touch them and feel skin, and I don't know. It was almost a little disorienting to me. Not I didn't get motion sickness or anything, but my brain just kept trying to trick me out.
Yeah. Well, actually, if they got a really new TV, it might have had that what is it, the 48 I forget the term because it's always confusing to me because it calls it hertz, but I mean I guess it's like 48 hertz or what, like the someone's going to correct me on in the feed, I'm sure, but the basically where it takes what is typically 24 or 30 frames per second on TV and movies and doubles it. So you're seeing 48 frames per second, and it's doing like software interpolation of the in-betweeny frames, and it looks so weird to me. Like I mean, again, it's not like motion sickness inducing or anything because I have a pretty strong stomach for that stuff. Like 3D doesn't hurt my eyes or anything, but like I had to turn it. I got a new TV a couple of years ago and had to. Basically, I realized, wow, I paid a lot of money for this TV, and I mostly paid for stupid software I'm not going to use because I had to go through the settings and like turn this off, turn that off, because I want it to look like what whoever like did the movie, like, and the effects and the mastering and they made it look a certain way, and now my TV's trying to ruin it to make it look better, which for most people is just like blast the contrast out. And add more frames because then it looks like real life or something, but it just kind of ruins it for me, and I want to see things as they were intended to be by the artist or the cinematographer or or whoever.
And I've heard, I don't know the veracity of this statement, so if I'm incorrect, someone please tell me so I can stop saying it, but I've heard that the broadcasting has got to a point where capturing image has gotten so well that they actually have to add an interference to it to make it not so crisp. Both audio and video.
I don't know. That's interesting. I should probably read up on that. Is it? I feel like I heard or read somewhere that they're going to start doing sports at a higher frame rate, like actually filming it at a much higher frame rate, which makes a lot of sense to me actually. And I mean, so that like whenever they do, I guess they do some slow motion replays and things like that, but just, or maybe I read about it in Wired because that's kind of where I get all of my like techie news and everything. But yeah, I don't know, but that makes sense to me. Where I feel like movies should stay at the at 24 or 30 frames a second.
The human eye can only process a certain number of frames per second anyway.
Yeah, somewhere around 60 is the cap. After that, you can't tell a difference. Like you couldn't really tell if it's smoother or not.
Yeah.
And I mean, I want to say that old school animation was 12 frames a second, or at least some of it was. At least your Saturday morning cartoon is probably only 12.
Yeah, I have no idea about that stuff. I've only really just gotten into frame rates with the YouTube stuff. Before then, I really, it just was never something that it never even occurred to me that was what was going on.
Yeah, it's something I've definitely had to deal with a decent bit. But then I start whenever we do animation, we we've done some like web commercial-y things for some companies in the past, and I always just do everything at 30 because we're doing animation, like we're not filming people live or anything like that.
Right.
So I do that stuff at 30, and obviously our game is like. Well, it's interesting. It's sort of frame rate independent, but I'm gonna have to have Kobe like force certain frame stuff, and this is sort of it's gonna be a super abstract topic for most people. But we ran into some problems where we would animate the character swinging a sword, and then because we animate it pretty slowly, so we like animate the full arc at like the slowest a sword will ever go, and then we speed that up. But the problem is you would swing the sword so fast the game would show the frame here where you're winding up and then show a frame at a random spot somewhere in here and then show the last frame, so it'd just be like boop boop, and it doesn't look smooth. And so there were some things I was trying to fine tune in Spine to make it basically show more relevant frames, but I'm actually going to have Kobe basically force it because whenever you would swing the sword, like it would literally show any random frame between here because the frame rate isn't locked. Like the system can't even guarantee that it would show like frame 1, frame 20, frame 40. Let's say
Mm-hmm.
if 40 is the last frame. And that's what I would like to do as an animator. I'd like to be able to predict, okay, I know it will show a frame here, here, and here. And if that looks bad, I can tweak the animation so that that 20th frame that I know will get shown is a little more over here, because it might make the motion more fluid. But, you know, I can't guarantee that unless Kobe kind of forces a specific time step on those. So we might be doing some kind of hybrid of, like, not really like frame rate capping, but I forget, we had a long conversation about this, but it probably would end up resorting to some form of frame rate capping, but it'll still be really high for people whose computers can display the game at, you know, a super, you know, like 60 frames a second or so.
Right. That's pretty cool. Yeah, using fraps, I don't know what would have caused this, but every once in a while, at least I now use XSplit with it because the latest build actually using fraps actually physically slows the game down. But in 0.6.3 and a couple others, every once in a while it would lock my frames to